and talking about it, I might even be able to just do something right now. I should move Kdenlive, free open source software. Let's take an example of some footage. So you take a video, you drag it into this project bin here. It usually prompts you and says like, hey, we've recognized the resolution and frame rate of this video. Would you like us to convert the project over to that? Yes. So now it's an HD 1080p 60 FPS video. You drag this down to the timeline, and the way that I record in OBS, I have 4 separate audio tracks. There's one for what's happening, one for my microphone, audio events that might happen during the stream, so I can choose to exclude or include them if I want. Oh, and my music track, of course, as long as it's not part of the video that we're watching. I just mean like my own music if I listen to something, what have you. So I'm prompted, this needs 2 more audio tracks. Add them in. You plop it into video number 1, you get all these separate tracks, but in this case, I only need this bottom track. I can right click to ungroup these clips and just rid of these, drag this bad boy up, and I'll hold shift and left click so I can highlight both of these at the same time and group them back together. Now, based on these audio waves, it's very obvious all of this is a waste. I can hit the X key to get my cutting tool and just snip it, S to go back to my selection tool, or Control Z. I can even just find the part where I want to be and then drag, bring this forward, and we can start right here.
Now, don't move.
Cold metal presses against the skin beneath
The
your
Dapper
brow.
Foxtrot, how you doing, mate? Good to see you here.
Okay, so between what's happening in the game and when he starts talking, that was kind of loud. So what I can do is I can specifically cut this particular part where I see it getting particularly loud. I can right click within the volume track and insert an effect with the volume, and I can just tone that back a bit. And as long as you have the kind of PC that allows you to play back and make adjustments the way I do, then you can kind of do this live. So I can just like...
Dapper Foxtrot, how you doing, mate? Good to see you here.
Tap, tap, stab.
So that was a lot more balanced. He's gonna make this squelch sound. That was kind of hard on the ears, so I can tone that back too. If I want to, I can even just recycle the same effect at the same adjustment. If I want to try and keep some consistency, I can just grab this effect and drop it in here.
Do you feel that? Ha! I think we have the blighter on the run.
Same idea here. Anywhere I see that it's like particularly hard on the ears, similarly here, I'll just add that audio effect to all of these parts and see how that sounds. Keep trying to save. See, that's the thing, is always be saving. It's a reflex. I just go to save every time I do something.
It's the skin beneath
The
your
Dapper
brow.
Foxtrot, how you doing, mate? Good to see you here.
Tap, tap, stab.
Do you feel that? Ha! I think we have the blighter on the run.
Just sticking a fucking in his eye. Blue, 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 blue.
Agree. It's a feisty critter. Just
Blue, 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 blue.
further.
Volo tears the pic from your brain with a violent jerk.
If I let the video play, then it'll force my timeline.
Your
Like
eye
this.
plops down in
But as I'm watching the line move along, I can click my middle mouse button and it allows me to go back and forth like this. So I can move the timeline as needed. And then as long as I'm not clicking on the scene itself, I'm clicking around the timeline or up here on the time, then I'm able to scrub the video. Now, if you don't have the processing power, you can go into the settings and there's the opportunity for proxy clips. Proxy clips, it will show in the preview window a lesser resolution. So it's more easy to process when you're trying to just scrub your video and find the parts that you need. But then when you go to render, it'll render at full resolution, whatever your project is set up for. Usually you're probably going to be making 1080p 60 FPS videos. Not always the case. What else is there?
How you doing, mate? Good to see you here.
tap, tap, stab,
We're talking about this tap, tap, stab.
stab.
Maybe I want to isolate that one word, and then we can go insert an effect, transform. As long as my selector is over top of the scene that I'm working with for the transform, then I can just start playing around with it and seeing what it'll look like. If I want to go to a certain position, I can hold this circle if I want to, and just sort of force this so that I want to try and get stab in the middle, and then I'm going to enlarge it, drag it a little more, enlarge it a little more. Now it's off screen, but I can still use these adjustments that are behind my head to just go a little bit farther. So if I want to go a little bit down, there's the word stab, zoom in a little bit more, come down. Maybe we try to center it a bit more. And it's like, why am I doing this? Well, because I feel like there might be potential for some humor with a quick zoom to the word. So just as an example,
Tap, tap, stab.
you can also break things out onto other parts of the timeline. So, I mean, if I wanted to move this scene up, you know, potentially fade into the next scene. So the fact that this is overlapping, I'm just doing like random examples. I'm not saying it's going to look good, but if you wanted this to fade in now, as opposed to just having it straight up snap to the next image. Now it does these little pauses because it recognizes that it's moving to a new block. It won't look like that in the final render. That's just it being held back by the fact that this is a full 1080p. Now with an effect transition, it can't quite handle that. So it's trying to like slow it down. But what I can do, let's say I wanted to test this particular transition just to make sure that it's going to look good. I can also use guides by pressing the G key. So let's come right here and I'll press G. We'll just call this guide. We'll just go slightly past when the fade ends to see what that looks like. We'll call this guide 1. Now I can render. I'll go to full custom quality 100%. I usually push the encoder all the way. I set the amount of threads that my PC is capable of, which is 8, but it's recommended that you just do the amount of threads as many cores as you have. I do MP4. So we'll go ahead and we'll render based on the guide zone. So I can choose my first guide, guide 1, and we're going to render 48 hundredths of a second. We'll just call it untitled. Done within 3 seconds. We'll come over here and find the video. So now you can see there's no pause. It just goes right into the fade. So that's a way that you can test if you want to. If you don't want to wait for the final preview of all of it, you just like, I want to make sure that this part really works. I can also click on these guides to have the cursor snap to that point if I want to start from there. And while I'm hovering over that exact point, I can just press G and remove those guides. Usually the way that I add in music, I'll grab one of my non-copyright, non-attribution required tracks. Let's take a BG3 track. We'll just do Who Are You? Drag it to the project, drag it to the timeline. This is going to be quite loud. So usually I drop this down to like -24 and kind of play with it from there. So as I'm playing the video, I can just make little tweaks.
Cold metal presses against the skin beneath
The
your
Dapper Foxtrot, how you doing, mate? Good to see you here.
tap, tap, stab.
It looks ridiculous, but I mean, that's just because I was messing around with all these examples. Oh, and I muted this audio here. If I want to just remove that, I can just hit the little trash can.
Stab.
Do you feel that? Ha!
There we go.
I think we have the blighter on the run.
Just sticking a fucking in his eye. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Agree. It's a feisty critter. Just
Bloop, 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 bloop.
further.
Volo tear.
It doesn't sound the best because there's already music coming from this source video that we're listening to. But in order to keep the narrator plus his voice and everything part of the track, adding a layer of music underneath somewhat helps the music that's in the source video blend a little bit. It's not perfect if you're dealing with something that already has some music in it. I can trim the music up here. If I can't find like a reasonable point for the music to stop, I can at least trim it to the size that I need and add a fade out effect. Green, fade in effect. Red, fade out effect. So you can have those things just automatically be generated. It becomes a part of your effects when you click into it, and you can tweak it as necessary. If you couldn't find a logical point to end your music track, then you can just add a fade out to it.
Don't move.
Maybe make both of these audio tracks fade out at the same time. If you just carefully click, it'll give you like a default length of 3 seconds.
Don't move.
Maybe have it fade out with video as well.
Don't Move.
Let's take this KEKW clip. Oh, this has 4 tracks as well. We have this clip that I recorded from YouTube. Now, first of all, we'll ungroup because this is just a dead track. It didn't have audio that I needed. We'll regroup. And then if we have a scenario like this where I've already added some music in here, but I'm trying to layer this in on top, if I move this down to align with this and then regroup these two, then when I move this video up to layer over top, it'll move the music down below everything else as well. So we can have that together. Now, I don't want it to look like this because I'm seeing these captions that I don't care for. At the beginning, there's a video player. So we want to get as far as when the video player goes away, trim that off. And then maybe I'd want to completely ignore. I start spamming KEKW and BAMs. Okay, well, I don't care for that. I just care for the face and the sound. So if we go under effects, there are a lot of effects here. I don't know them all. Feel free to look through them. But one of the ones that I use most commonly is the edge cropping. So I just type edge, I get my edge crop, plop it onto here. Now, as you can see above me, top, left, bottom, right. See if we can make this fit to the screen. Even if it's not a perfect crop that fits to the screen, what I'll do is I'll make it tight. We don't need a perfect resolution. It's a meme. Everybody gets the meme. And then if we add the transform, that'll be layered underneath, which is now below me. Reorder them if you want. And I'm just gonna shrink this so that it's something that'll be layered on top. So if we go back to our tap, tap, stab.
Tap, stab.
Now, right after that stab happens, I want my KEKW boy to come in and start laughing. We can kind of reposition this here. Tap, tap, stab, laugh.
You feel that?
So then I can just trim off the rest of this here. And now we just have we've balanced out the audio so he's not coming through too loud. We have a quick little snap to the word stab and then your classic KEKW.
Stab.
You feel that? Ha! I think we have the blighter on the run.
Just sticking a fucking in his eye.
See, now the real trick is taking what I've just recorded to try and explain all this and editing that into logical little videos. So what I could do.
Ain't nobody got time for that.